Damn. How about we start by having everyone read each other's and give them a mark? What do you think? Decide how many marks I get and then decide whose answer is better. Alright. Is anyone pretty confident they got 2 marks? I did last time, Abdul. So how, Gora, can you tell us yours?
Yeah, basically there's we have to imagine a theater that a lot of actors are just jumping in and out in high speeds. I don't know how to word it.
Yeah.
But the catch is that the stage does not exist and it's part of our imagination.
Yeah.
And Hume says that in order, for example, the stage is an identity and the actors are a thought. And we imagine the identity as the structure, but it really isn't, just the actors and the thoughts going around.
Yeah, good one. Nice. So what's the point of it? What's it to illustrate?
Sorry?
What's the example supposed to illustrate?
How identity is a concept that we have created but is not necessary or doesn't exist. It changes constantly.
He does make that point for sure. He does make that point at the end of paragraph 4. Yeah, he makes the point that the mind is a theatre. There's no theatre, right? We have no concept of really, no experience of the theatre, no idea like of what materials it's composed, right? Yeah, that is an idea that he expresses, but the point of it is simply to illustrate the idea that we have heaps of perceptions coming in and out. Yeah, so the point of the example is to illustrate for us what it's like to have a bunch of different perceptions, or actors, or costumes, etc., just like you said, coming and going. Does that make sense to everyone? Yeah. Does everyone see how that explains bundle theory? Is bundle theory? Not getting any nods. Who can explain what his bundle theory is?
We are nothing but a bundle collection of perceptions.
A bundle of perceptions? Good. We're nothing but a bundle of perceptions. Bundle of collection of different perceptions which succeed each other with an inconceivable rapidity and are in perpetual flux and movement. Yeah? You guys reckon you can all memorize that?
No.
If we say it often enough?
No.
If I say it 20 times to every period, do you reckon you'll
Say
memorize
what?
it?
Say what?
Do you want to say it all together?
Say what? Yeah,
It'll help
let's
you
go.
memorize it.
Actually,
So, paragraph 4, top of paragraph 4, that's where it is. Let's have a look. It says they're nothing but a bundle. Does everyone see that? We'll read it out together, and then we'll see who can remember it from memory at the end. Ready? 3, 2, 1. Nothing but a bundle or collection of different perceptions which succeed each other with an inconceivable rapidity and in a perpetual flux and movement. Nice. Next time we do that, whoever I don't hear is going to say it themselves in a Scottish accent. Anyway, moving on. Let's go to paragraph 5. So that's bundle theory, right? He thinks that's what we are. And importantly, right, he's going to go on to say that what that means is that we have no continuing self. Yeah, because there's nothing, no perception that's constant, that could be us, that we could call identity. Yeah? And if anything is real, all our ideas come from experiences, right? Experiences are like how we interact with the world. And since we have no experience of some sort of constant feeling or perception, there's no us that we have an idea of. Does that make sense? Alright, 5. I might just read this one through. We're just sort of finishing off and moving into the next section. So for 5, I gave it this title, The Mistaken Assumption of Identity. You might like to write that in as a title above 5. Some people put this title above 6. I think it makes sense to put it above 5, but it's up to you. But he's moving from this statement that he's found. He's like, we have no solid identity. We're just a bundle of perceptions. So his question is then, what tricks us into thinking we do have an identity? Alright, so let's read through from the start. So what then gives us so great a propension, like a habit of, or a motivation to ascribe an identity to these successive perceptions, and to suppose ourselves possessed, to suppose we have, of an invariable and uninterrupted existence through the course of our whole lives, through the whole course of our lives? What makes us think that we have something that continues as us, even though all we are, our perceptions, is constantly changing? In order to answer this question, we must distinguish betwixt personal identity as it regards our... It's an old word, isn't it? Betwixt. So you can say that to your friends next time you're at the ice cream shop. You have to choose betwixt chocolate and vanilla.
Yeah.
Just means between. As it regards our thought or imagination, and separately, as it regards our passions or the concern we take in ourselves. The first is our present subject, as in what we're going to talk about for now, and to explain it perfectly, we must take the matter pretty deep and account for that kind of identity which we attribute to plants and animals, there being a great analogy betwixt it and the identity of a self or person. So we're going to look at, he's saying, in the rest of this, we're going to start to look at how we think about the identity of plants and animals, and we're going to compare that to our concept of identity ourselves, right? But that middle bit is saying that there are two different kinds of personal identity we have to distinguish between. Personal identity as we imagine or think of it. This is our concept of what it means to have a self. Yeah? Can we all get these two different kinds of notes, either in your books or written down as a note next to it? Personal identity as we imagine or think of it. And then personal identity as expressed through self-concern. Right? Which is just like, oh, I should clean my clothes now because later I'm going to want clean clothes, not dirty clothes. Right? Yeah, I should put my ice cream back in the freezer so that later I can have delicious ice cream instead of just a puddle of goo. Yeah? Self-concern involves like concern for your future and past, maybe self as well. Yeah? Can anyone think of a way, just a random tangent, that we could have concern for our past self? Why did I do this? You could be like worried about like what your state of mind was in the past. No? Is there a way that you would be worried about like an effect on the past self from the present?
Only I didn't do that.
If only I didn't do that, maybe. I'm thinking about like reputation or like the way people remember you having done something. Yeah? Like your friends might think that you betrayed them in the past when really you were sticking up for them. Yeah, you might be like worried about your reputation. Alright. Are we pretty happy with 5? Moving on? Alright, paragraph 6. Alright, this one's a long one. So, here we go. This one's going to start off with some definitions. So, Eric, I might get you to read the first sentence, and then Abdul, you can translate in a minute.
Whoa.
We have a distinct idea of objects that remain invariable and uninterrupted for a supposed variation of time. In this idea, we call that identity or sameness.
Nice. Abdul, what's identity or sameness?
Identity or sameness is when an object is the same over time and it does not change.
Yeah.
Is identical.
Yeah, it's identical.
Very good. Great explanation.
Yeah.
Nice work. So he gives us this definition of what identity is. Remember, this section is called of identity and diversity, right? Identity means sameness. It means when something is the same, doesn't change over time. Yep. All right, Kevin, next sentence for us.
We have also a distinct idea of several different objects existing in succession. and connected together by a close relation. And this, to an accurate view, affords as perfect a notion of diversity, as if there was no matter of relation among the objects. They're different.
They are different. Why are they different? When are things diverse, Nick?
Change?
Good! When things change, right? So if something changes, it's not the same, so it's therefore not identical. Yeah? Are we happy with that? Now he does say here that things can be connected by a close relation and they can exist in succession, right? What does it mean to exist in succession, Jeremy? No, that's alright. Daniel? What does it mean to exist in succession?
I don't know.
For sure. Andy? To continuously exist? Sort of to come as a result of something else? Yeah? Or to fall next to is the idea. Yeah? Alright. We're going to look at that a bit more in a minute. So, diversity. When things change, they're a bit different. Yeah, the oak tree follows from the acorn. It exists in a way in succession. The oak tree results from, succeeds the acorn. Yeah. But they're not the same. They're different things because there's been change. Yeah? Does anyone want to argue that the acorn and the oak tree are the same? Same atoms? Atoms are the same. Isn't there different atoms as well?
Yeah, most of the
Do you reckon most of the atoms in an oak tree are the same as the atoms that were in the acorn?
yeah.
I reckon they're mostly different atoms. Because the acorn has atoms that are this much atoms, maybe 1 trillion atoms. But an oak tree has like a gazillion atoms.
Wrong. Because it doesn't exist.
Oh, I'm sorry, a zillion. That's a real number. Yeah. So oak trees are different to acorns, so they're different. Yeah. Anything that has changed is different. That's Hume's claim. But though these two ideas of identity and a succession of related objects be in themselves perfectly distinct and even contrary, even opposite, yeah, we can clearly see what sameness is and what difference is. Does everyone understand how these are very clear and even opposite? Yeah, something's either the same or it's different. But though these ideas and a succession of related objects be in themselves perfectly distinct and even contrary, yet it is certain that in our common way of thinking, like our common sense, they're generally confounded with each other. Confounded means confused in the mind, confused conceptually, mixed together. Yeah? So like if you didn't know Andy and Daniel very well, because you just you don't have philosophy class with them, you might confound them one day and Daniel will be walking down the street and you'll want to get his attention, be like, oh, hey Andy! And Daniel will be like, what? And you've confounded them, right? So you've confused them for each other. Everyone good? Cool.
Oh.
How do we confound these two ideas, according to Hume? Harij. Sorry, focus. Any ideas? Okay. Anna? Not sure. Megan?
We say that when something is diverse, we call it identical when it's actually diversity.
Yeah, we often say that things that have changed have an identity. Yeah? We often confuse us, we're the prime example. Yeah? We're the perfect example. So, I now, me today, is very different from me a year ago. Yeah? I've changed since then. But in our common thinking, we say that I am still Mr. Collar. And a year ago I was Mr. Collar, right? We ascribe identity to something that's changed. And this doesn't fit his definitions here. Yeah? We're saying that I have identity even though I've clearly changed and I'm diverse. Yeah? Alright. Where are we up to? Generally confounded with each other. Ryan, can you read the next sentence for me? Got it there?
Yeah. Wait, which part of it?
So that action of
The action of the imagination by which we consider the uninterrupted and invariable object, and that by which we reflect on the succession of related objects, are almost the same to the feeling, nor is there much more effort of thought required in the latter cause than in the former.
it's a really long sentence. Evan?
When we see something as identical, it's something that's really, really similar. We think they're pretty much the same and there's no difference between them. We
Good.
think
And
there's identity in both.
nice. And why do we usually think they're... Because they're really, really similar, but why do we mistake them for something that's the same?
Because the one that's really, really similar is like, like in succession is like it follows. There's like a cause and effect in a way.
Yeah, nice. So we link them because of their close resemblance, yeah? And it's kind of tricks us mentally. It's like a mental optical illusion, if that makes sense, right? So I now so closely resemble the me of like in an hour, yeah, who's probably had like another coffee, right? So I'm different, but I so closely resemble the me from now that you just assume I'm the same. That make sense to everyone? Yeah? Cool. It says, nor is there much more effort of thought required in the latter case than in the former. Right? He's saying that like the easy way for us to think about it is just to assume that we're the same. We look the same, we are the same. Yeah? Alright. Next one, Helborough.
The relation facilitates the transition of the mind from one object to another, and renders its passage smooth as if contemplated one continued object.
Eric.
I'm not really sure.
Yeah, that's alright. It's saying that because things are so related, things so resemble themselves in earlier forms, yeah, things don't change by massive degrees usually. Yeah? Like if you've got a car and you suddenly smash it and take all the wheels off, you might then say it's different, right? But if you've got a car and you just like put a little scratch on the back, people will be like, it's the same car, I don't even see any difference. Does that make sense to everyone? In the normal matter of course, yeah, the relation, the resemblance, facilitates the transition of the mind from one object to another. It seems like the same thing. Yeah, we can't tell the difference. I'll keep going because it's pretty much the same. This resemblance is the cause of the confusion and mistake and makes us substitute the notion of identity instead of that of related objects. So maybe next to that just write resemblance is the problem. We have this mistaken assumption of identity. We do it because things resemble other things. Alright, says, however, at one instant, we may consider the related succession as variable or interrupted. We are sure the next to ascribe to it a perfect identity and regard it as invariable and uninterrupted. Yeah? So even though small changes happen, we just assume that no changes have happened and it seems like the same thing. Yeah? Excellent. Our propensity to this mistake is so great, like our habit of making this mistake is so common, from the resemblance above mentioned, that we fall into it before we're aware, before we even think about it. And though we incessantly correct ourselves by reflection, if we think about it, we realize they're different, right? Though we constantly do that and return to a more accurate method of thinking, yet we cannot long sustain our philosophy or take off this bias from the imagination. Saying that even though we can, once we think about it, realize that there are differences, and differences mean there's not identity, just habitually we end up treating things like they have identity. It's a bit like Descartes saying that he constantly assumes he exists by habit. He assumes that chairs exist. Yeah, he assumes that food exists because he gets hungry and he just wants to eat it. You guys remember that? Cool. How are we going today, everyone? Everyone seems very quiet. Like, we're plodding through.
Perhaps.
People tired? Tired of Hume?
Perhaps.
Perhaps. All right, let's move through this a bit faster then. Our last resource is to yield to it. Means, well, since we're just constantly making this error, we just say, oh, well, maybe the error is the right thing. And we boldly assert that these different related objects are in effect the same, however interrupted and variable. However much they change, we just say they're the same. Yeah? So me is like a kindergarten kid. So me now, obviously we're different, but we can't be bothered dealing with saying that things are different all the time they change, so we'll just say it's the same. All good? Cool. Yes? Not yes. Cool. In order to justify, are we up to that? Is that where we are?
Our last resort is to yield to it.
Our last resort is to yield to it and boldly assert.
We did that.
We've done that one. In order to justify to ourselves this absurdity, we often feign some new and intelligible principle that connects the objects together and prevents their interruption or variation. So we say that even though things change a little bit, maybe there's like one core thing about them that stays the same. And we're like, oh, well, we can't find anything, so let's just make something up. And later on there, he says, thus we feign the continued existence of the perception of our senses to remove the interruption. And we call it something like, or we run into the notion of soul and self and substance. Yeah? So maybe just underline soul and self and substance to disguise the variation. So he thinks that these are made-up concepts that we've imagined to help ourselves, trick ourselves into thinking that things stay the same. So I'd like you to write a note next to that. These are made-up concepts that we imagine to help ourselves, trick ourselves into thinking that things have identity, stay the same. Yep. He says that these ideas of soul and self and substance are concepts that we've invented, we imagine, to support our own misjudgment that we have identity, something like that. How would you do? Now, I'd like you to talk to the person next to you. Do you think this is possible? Are we just tricking ourselves into thinking that we have identity?
Yes, I agree.
Are these concepts just made up so we can just like support our own tricking ourselves? Go for it.
Yes. I agree. Yeah. I don't understand potentially. What would you say about this?
As long as you remember.
Hume is a bit more confusing. Yeah, I agree.
So we might have a self. Or at least we have a concept. What about soul? Think maybe?
Done. Okay, hand up if you think Hume might be right.
We might have just made up these concepts to help ourselves trick ourselves. Hand up if you think you have a continuing self. Oh, you guys are getting well convinced by Hume. Nice work. Good job, Hume. He's doing well at the moment, isn't he? Alright, let's quickly get through the rest. But we may further observe, we can further see, that where we do not give rise to such a fiction, like where we don't accept this fairy tale, our propension to confound identity with relation is so great that we're apt to imagine something unknown and mysterious. Even when we don't think about like a soul or some other continuing substance, we just imagine that there's some unknown mysterious thing making identity. Connecting the parts beside their relation. And this I take to be the case with regard to the identity we ascribe to plants and vegetables. And even when this does not take place, we still feel a propensity to confound these ideas, though we are not able fully to satisfy ourselves in that particular, not find anything invariable and uninterrupted to justify our notion of identity. Has anyone ever grown a vegetable?
Yeah.
What have you grown, Daniel?
Tomato.
Tomatoes? Nice. What do you start with?
Seed.
Seed, right? Like this big. Yeah? They're little. Yeah? And then at the end, what do you get?
Like a bunch.
A bunch of tomatoes, right? Now, you're going to say that there's a tomato plant, right? And the seed becomes, has this identity with this tomato plant. Yeah? And it's the one tomato plant, and then the tomatoes that you pick are a part of the tomato plant. Right? Does anyone think tomatoes have souls? And that the soul of the seed spreads into all of the tomatoes? And so all of the tomatoes have little seed Horcrux souls? Harry Potter fans, anyone? Horcrux. Can everyone see, no one really thinks that plants have, some people do, but most people don't think plants have souls, right?
Vegan.
Yeah? So,
If these vegetables had eyes, would you kill them?
I think if vegans thought plants had souls, then they'd be in real trouble, right? In terms of what to eat.
If the meat had eyes,
So everyone, even the most sympathetic people, are going to think that plants don't have souls, right? And Hume thinks that, at least for the example, we don't think plants have souls, right? But even with plants, even with tomatoes, we ascribe some unknown and mysterious property, which he's just saying plant identity is, yeah, which says that the seed is the same thing as the tomato, when it's obvious that they're different things. Does everyone see that? So the acorn and the oak tree might be the same sort of thing. It's obvious that an acorn is a different thing to an oak tree, but we ascribe some sort of unknown and mysterious property to the acorn, which continues on into the oak tree. We say that because they're related through succession, like the acorn grows into the oak tree, they're the same thing. Even though Hume says they're very different. Does that make sense to everyone? Nice. Can you write next to that plants, vegetables example? Something like that, just so you know where it is.
So you just write plants and vegetables.
And I'd like to draw your attention to this idea, just to clarify this difference between identity and sameness. Let's say you have the number 100, right? And you add 1,000th to it, yeah? Or 1,000,000th, yeah? The number 100 does not equal 100.0001. Those are different numbers. Does everyone see that? If you went to your maths class and you were 100 equals 100.0001, your maths teacher would flip out. Yeah? Because that's not how maths works, that's not how the universe works. Right? Hume is saying that any change in the tiniest part means that the whole is completely different. Yeah? Because change equals not sameness. Yeah, if you change the number 100, it's not the same as the number 100.0001, even though that's a tiny little change. Everyone see that? Cool. So you can see why then for Hume we don't have identity at all, because what we are, if we're anything, is just a bundle of perceptions, and those perceptions are constantly changing. Constant change in perceptions, yeah? Click over here, A flat. Click over here, C. I don't know. You know what I mean? Kind of. People who don't do musical theory are like, what are you talking about? Letters. But I think you get what I mean. Different perceptions, right? So because we're constantly changing, we cannot have sameness. Alright, 7. Do you want a little mental break, or are we good to keep going?
Potentially.
Mental break. Tell each other a joke for 10 seconds. Not jokes, I I'm not the me I was a second ago. I wasn't the same person when I did the exam. You can't really mark up score. Yeah, we're different. This is all this yeah, it's not necessarily fair. I'll give your score to the future you, who's a different person. It's a good test actually, right? Because if you really believe you don't care about what the future you gets as a score, because they're a different person. But if you do care about your score, you don't really believe you. Yeah, but what if you're both? You're not sure, you should probably hedge your bets and do a good job on your You wouldn't be responsible. Yeah, but you might cop the consequences of being caught. We're going to investigate some ways in which you might be considering. Alright, 7, here we go. I'd like to get through 7 before bell. So, 7 starts with, thus the controversy, as in the big debate, concerning identity is not merely a dispute of words. What do we call a problem that's a dispute over word meaning? It's a something problem, that's semantic problem. He's saying this is not just semantics. Yeah? Maybe next to that. Not just semantics. That's what I wrote. It's up to you. The next one is, for when we attribute identity, when we say you are a continuing thing, in an improper sense to variable or interrupted objects, yeah, we say you're the same thing as that thing that's different. Our mistake is not confined to the expression, the word meaning, but it's commonly attended with a fiction, a wrong idea, either of something invariable, non-changing, and uninterrupted, or of something mysterious and inexplicable, like a soul or a self, or at least with a propensity to such fictions. Yeah, a movement towards unknown and mysterious ideas of identity. What will suffice to prove this hypothesis to the satisfaction of every fair inquirer is to shew from daily experience and observation that the objects that are variable and interrupted and yet are supposed to continue the same are such only as consist of a succession of parts. Yeah? It's like if we want to prove that things are different, we have to show that they resemble each other only because their parts are the same, but not their whole. And they're connected by resemblance, contiguity, or causation. If we underline those 3, resemblance, contiguity, and causation. And this is what they mean. So can we write these out in your notes as well? Resemblance means it looks similar. It resembles it. Yeah? Someone might say, oh, you resemble your brother. Yeah? Or your sister or your parents. You look just like your parent. You got your father's eyes or something like that. Contiguity means it's next to it. And it means in 2 senses. Contiguity, you can be next to something in space, as in my hand can move only a little through space, just like this. Yeah? Or also next to in time. we're all constantly moving through time, but we're like next to our previous selves in time. Yeah? If I could time travel, people might not assume I'm the same person as now, for example. But it's a simple concept. It just means next to, in time or space, or both. Yeah?
If you could time travel, would you rather travel to the past or the future?
If I could only do one,
Yeah.
I think probably the future.
How far back?
Future? How far?
Oh, I don't know. Can I only go once?
How far
Yeah,
the
you can go
past?
That's a hard one.
You can go once and you can go back.
Okay.
And go back.
No, that's too easy.
Back to the present.
That's too easy.
Let's finish this and then we'll talk. That's good. That's a good question. And last one, causation. It causes it to be as it is. It somehow has some sort of causative effect that results in something happening. Alright, now the interesting thing to note about these is that Hume thinks that if any of these have happened, there's been a change. Pretty much. Maybe not always, but pretty much, right? If these things have happened, there's been a change. But even though they seem like they're very similar to whatever it is that's occurred before and after of whatever the object is or the person, they've changed, and so they can't be the same. So, for such a succession answers evidently to our notion of diversity, it can only be by mistake we ascribe to it an identity. And as the relation of parts, which leads us into this mistake, is really nothing but equality, relationships are like equality, not a fact, which produces an association of ideas and an easy transition of the imagination from one to another. It can only be from the resemblance which this act of the mind bears to that, by which we contemplate one continued object that the error arises. We don't see sameness, we only see similarity, and the sameness is imagined by us. Does that make sense? Cool. Our chief business then, so our core activity then must be to prove that all objects to which we ascribe identity without observing their invariableness and uninterruptedness are such as consist of a succession of related objects. So something will be identical if it is the same exactly, if it is invariable, unchanging, and uninterrupted. There's no break in it. Yeah? And if anything doesn't have those things, then we have to show that it consists of some sort of succession of related objects. And it's different. Yeah? All good? Alright, let's wrap up there. We quickly look through this and we'll talk about time travel too.
If he had the infinite possible, what like he can just do whatever he wants.
Guys, not much homework. I'd like you to read, please, pages 161 and 162 of the textbook.
He can make an iMac.
You might like to read ahead, but I'll leave it up to you. And I think I travel 1,000 years. Well, I'm just optimistic about the future. I'm hoping I have like unlimited energy and peace by then. Or there will be no humans around. Most of it.
If you go back in travel 7 days, would you go back?
I don't know, I'm pretty comfortable.
Yeah, but we're immune.
Yeah, but then we spread
So
it.
we can't spread it because
No, we spread it, but we just don't die from it.
not does it affect
Am I
us?
still in
I just think
Australia?
during like the Egyptian era, like
You go anywhere.
Go back.
I say 10
I think
seconds.
I go back to.
I say 10 seconds for the dawn.
I think I go back to.
This? What, you expect that to happen? And then we make like 2 million.
No, I say we travel 2 minutes.
Catch that up. Maybe England, 1800.
No, I say we travel 2 minutes because I don't want to walk in the car.
Something like that. I reckon that'd be alright.
Thanks so much.
See you guys. See ya.